When did you realise something was wrong?
In early 2018, I realised something was wrong because I was in pain, intermittent pain, and I just wasn't feeling very well. So I went back and forth to my GP over about 6 months. So say I went the first time in about March. They first told me it was cystitis. They told me it was worms. They told me it was menopause. They sent me for a colonoscopy, which was clear, and then they said no further treatment was needed. And then finally, I ended up in A&E in a lot of pain, and they told me to get a scan with my doctor. So in the September, I was finally diagnosed with, unfortunately, stage 4 ovarian cancer.
Gosh, stage 4 ovarian cancer, which presumably, if you'd caught earlier, would have meant a very different story for you.
That would be the hope, certainly, yes.
Well, let me bring in Alex Holden at this stage, because automatically, you know, my sympathies obviously go to people who are presenting with these symptoms and being dismissed, but my sympathies also go to GPs because it's very easily confused. They are confusing symptoms, and presumably things like the menopause or worms might be legitimate other concerns. So is this the patients being neglected in some way, or is it that GPs need better educating?
It's absolutely both. There is an awareness crisis in ovarian cancer, so women need to know the symptoms, the population in general need to know the symptoms. GPs also need to increase their awareness of the symptoms. No GP, of course, wants to misdiagnose anybody. What we would like is that people rule out ovarian cancer at a much earlier stage rather than it being the last thing that they come to after a series of other diagnostic routes. So I think, yes, awareness increases across the board would be definitely an improvement.
Do you rule that out, Alex? I mean, is it an expensive process, a comparatively expensive process to rule ovarian cancer out at an early stage?
There is no screening for ovarian cancer, I think is important to mention, which doesn't help. And there is a fairly simple diagnostic blood test and a scan. I think just where the ovaries are, it's not simple. It can be a little bit complex to get in there, but definitely there are indications. And the symptoms themselves, although they can be confused with other things, the symptoms are fairly clear. Even in early stages of ovarian cancer, the vast majority of people will experience those symptoms as well. So it would be just to consider it early. So we ask GPs to be thinking about it earlier, and also women to be raising it earlier as well. If women were going to GPs and saying, actually, have you thought about ovarian cancer, that would also help.
I want to bring Sarah back in at this point, because, Sarah, your doctors have told you that your cancer is manageable but not curable, and you've been through, well, significant treatment. Just tell us a little bit about that journey.
Well, when I was diagnosed originally, I had 3 rounds of chemo, then a big operation because the cancer had spread significantly in my stomach area. I then had more chemo and was on a maintenance drug for just over a year. But unfortunately, my cancer came back. So I then had another 6 rounds of chemo, and I'm now on a different drug, which has been working for me since April of last year.
What sort of prognosis does that give you?
Well, I'm lucky in that the drug that I'm on is now available, because I think 3 or 4 years ago it wasn't widely available. My cancer is genetic, so there's a risk that I pass this on to my daughter as well, which obviously is a big concern. But there are drugs available now for people whose cancer is genetic, which weren't available a few years ago, and they have a good prognosis. Women have been on them for a few years. We're hoping many years, but we don't know yet.
And Sarah, when you reflect on your experience, do you feel angry towards your GP for missing it, or you know, how much was your awareness of ovarian cancer before you got diagnosed with it?
I mean, I think that's the thing. I consider myself a pretty intelligent woman. You know, I do all the health stuff. I had my mammograms, I had my smears, you know, I looked after myself. I didn't know the symptoms of ovarian cancer. If I had known the symptoms, I had a busy job. So I thought, you know, I was tired because I was stressed at work. I had bloating a bit, but I thought I've eaten the wrong thing. You know, you just dismiss these things. And if I had known about the symptoms earlier, I certainly would have pushed harder with my GP. I'm not angry with my GP. I'm a bit frustrated. But it was also my responsibility to be better informed, and I wasn't.
So, Alex, in the immediate term, what would you like to see happen? I mean, certainly with the genetic issue, I mean, certainly early screening could make a big difference there, couldn't it?
Unfortunately, at the moment, there isn't any evidence that screening would help, although there are various research studies. So at the moment, we're asking women and GPs and health professionals to know the symptoms, and actually Target Ovarian Cancer has launched an open letter that we're asking people to sign to ask the government to raise more awareness of the symptoms, as obviously that's going to have the most money behind it and that's going to have the most impact with the greatest number of people. It's Ovarian Cancer Awareness Month, and that's why we've released these news data today. So if people would like to go onto our website, targetovariancancer.org.uk, and sign that open letter, that will really help.